This woman would pick on me for anything, but her obsession with my mailbox was another story. First, it was an accident. Then it became routine. Every week, there she was, bumping into and knocking over my box. But I got tired of it. If she wanted to destroy my mail, now she'd have to deal with something indestructible. And, my friend, her reaction when she saw the new model was just perfect. If someone had told me a year ago that I would get into an epic conflict over a simple mailbox, I would have laughed and called them crazy. But here I am, telling the story of how my neighbor managed to turn a harmless object into a battlefield. And if you think I'm exaggerating, it's because you haven't met the kind of person who can lose sleep over a piece of mail that isn't even theirs. It all started with little things. My mailbox was on the edge of my property, like any other in the neighborhood. But for some reason that only God and her ego can explain, Karen decided that my box was a personal offense against the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The first incident was discreet. One day, I went out to collect my mail and noticed that the box was a little crooked. No big deal. It could have been the wind, a child playing, anything. But then it happened again, and again. And just when I thought I was paranoid, the truth fell into my lap. One day, I decided to install a security camera in front of my house. Not because of the mailbox specifically, but because the neighborhood had been experiencing a few thefts, and I thought it was worth it. On the first day of recording, I went to check the images, and there it was, in the middle of the night, flashlight in hand, kicking my mailbox. Yes, kicking. A middle-aged woman, dressed in a flowery robe, stomping on my mailbox as if she were fighting for the freedom of an oppressed nation. For a second, I was in shock. But then I started laughing, because it couldn't be real. Now, any normal person would call the police or at least confront them. But me? I wanted to see how far this madness would go. So I simply reinstalled the mailbox the next day, without saying anything, and I waited. The next night, she showed up again. This time, she didn't kick. She just pushed with her hands and walked away as if nothing had happened. But I already knew that this was going to become a routine. And that's when I decided that I needed to put a stop to this nonsense once and for all. If Karen wanted a war against my mailbox, then I was going to make sure I won. And I would win in style. If there's one thing I've learned throughout my life, it's that some people just don't understand when they're fighting a battle they've already lost. And Karen? She was the queen of that kind of people. After watching recordings of her kicking, shoving, and, on one particularly hilarious occasion, trying to rip my mailbox open with her bare hands, I realized that this woman wasn't going to stop. So, since she wanted to play, I was going to have some fun too. I researched for a few days, trying to find the ultimate solution. I thought about concrete. I thought about reinforced steel. I even thought about installing a shock system, but then I remembered that I liked my freedom and didn't want to be sued. Then I found the perfect answer: titanium. Does it sound like overkill? Yes, but I was past the point of caring. I made a few calls and found a locksmith who could do the job. I ordered a pure titanium post and a mailbox resistant to impact, corrosion, and, of course, crazy neighbors. If she wanted to kick something, let her kick that. The next morning, Karen drove past my house while I was supervising the installation. She stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and stared at me. Her face was a mixture of shock and sheer indignation. I could almost hear the voice in her head saying, "What's that idiot up to now?" I pretended not to notice her and continued my work. The locksmith installed the structure on the ground with reinforced concrete, ensuring that the mailbox wouldn't come out of there even with an explosion. Once the job was done, I stood there, appreciating my masterpiece. It was beautiful, brilliant, indestructible. But the best thing of all, now it was her turn to act, and I was waiting. The next evening, I prepared my coffee, sat comfortably on the sofa, and opened the security camera app. I already knew she wouldn't resist, and I was right. Around 2 a.m, here came Karen. Flowery robe, flashlight in hand, the same look as someone about to commit a crime. She approached the mailbox as if she were about to face a monster. She looked around, making sure no one was watching. And then the blow came. I saw it in slow motion. She lifted her foot with all the force in the world and kicked. And, my friend, what happened next was pure poetry. The impact was so violent that she was practically thrown backwards. Karen lost her balance, stumbled and fell, sitting in the middle of the sidewalk, holding her foot with both hands. The lantern rolled away. She lay there, writhing in pain, muttering swear words that would have made even a sailor blush. I watched, sipping my coffee, smiling like someone who has just seen the best episode of a series. She stood up with difficulty, limping. She looked at the mailbox, as if hoping that this time she had managed to destroy it. But there it was, impeccable, immovable, untouched. Karen had lost, and for the first time, she knew it. If I thought the mailbox war was going to end there, I was wrong. Karen was too stubborn to accept a simple defeat. She could have walked out of there, swallowed her pride, and got on with her life. But no, this woman didn't know how to lose. And, like any good villain who has been dealt a heavy blow, she decided to double down. The problem was that now she was limping. The next morning, I went out to get the newspaper and, right away, I saw the most wonderful scene in the world. Karen, sitting on the bench on the balcony, with a bag of ice on her foot. Yes, the woman who had tried to destroy my mailbox in the dead of night was now sitting there with her face closed, recovering from her own stupidity. If it had been anyone else, I might have worried. But after months of this woman making my life hell, all I could feel was a joy that's hard to describe. She pretended not to see me, but you could feel the hatred radiating from her. The whole neighborhood knew she had done something, but the best was yet to come. In the late afternoon, while I was washing my truck, I saw a different car pull up in front of her house, a shiny black sedan with a license plate that I immediately recognized. Lawyers. Now things were getting interesting. I already knew she was going to try some desperate move, but I had no idea it would be so pathetic. The next day, an official notice arrived in my mail. She was suing me. Yes, she was accusing me of intentionally installing a dangerous structure to cause harm to third parties. I couldn't believe what I was reading. The woman had spent months destroying my property, kicked over a titanium pole of her own free will, and now she wanted to make me pay for it? I laughed so hard I had to sit down. But that's okay. If she wanted to play that game, then I was going to play it. The day of the hearing arrived. We went to the local courthouse, and Karen showed up with her foot bandaged, limping dramatically, as if she had been the victim of a heinous crime. She walked in with a pompous lawyer, the kind who talks tough to sound smart. Me? I went alone, because, in all honesty, I didn't need any help to beat this clown show. The session began, and the judge asked her lawyer to present her case. The speech was Oscar-worthy. My client suffered serious injuries due to a malicious act by the defendant. You installed a highly resistant structure, knowing that it could cause damage, and you didn't put up any warnings about the risk. Oh, right. Now I was an evil villain who went around installing murderous letterboxes. The judge looked at me. Sir, how do you respond to these charges? I crossed my arms and smiled. Your Honor, my neighbor destroyed 3 of my mailboxes before that. I just wanted to make sure this one didn't get knocked over too. The judge frowned. Do you have proof of that? Oh yes, I did. I took the USB stick out of my pocket, handed it to the officer, and waited while they played the video. And then the whole room watched Karen kick my mailbox like a soccer ball. The judge stopped the video at the exact moment of impact. You could see her leg bending backwards and the look of pure pain on her face as she realized what a mistake she had made. The silence in the courtroom was beautiful. Her lawyer choked on her own argument. The judge sighed and took off his glasses. Madam, did you kick the structure of your own free will? She stammered. Minus I didn't know it was so hard. The judge wiped his hands across his face, no longer patient. Case dismissed. Next case. And that's how Karen lost for the second time. But, my friend, it wasn't over yet. If Karen had a shred of dignity, she would have accepted the judge's decision and got on with her life. But, as I had already learned, this woman didn't know how to lose. She left the courtroom furious, limping, huffing, muttering words that could not be repeated in public. Her foot was still bandaged, but honestly, it was her ego that was hurting. And if I thought she was going to give up after a public humiliation in front of the judge, I was sorely mistaken. Because Karen wasn't going to rest until she tried to finish me off somehow. The problem, this time, she really screwed herself. A few days after the hearing, the rumors started. The neighbors told me that she was trying to gather signatures so that I would be forced to remove my mailbox. Yes, after losing in court, her new strategy was to try to get the whole neighborhood to turn against me. And, as always, the reason she used was completely ridiculous. The presence of this mailbox poses an imminent risk to the children in the neighborhood. Yes, now, apparently, my mailbox was a danger to public safety. The detail? There were no children in the neighborhood. The condominium was made up almost entirely of elderly people and couples without children. The closest thing we had to a child was an elderly Labrador called Max, who slept all day. In other words, her excuse didn't make any sense. But Karen didn't care about logic. She wanted to hit me anyway. Only this time, it backfired. After years of making her neighbors' lives hell with absurd rules, bogus fines, and a ridiculous obsession with the neighborhood aesthetic standard, no one was on her side anymore. When she started circulating the petition, people reacted immediately. The first lady she approached simply shut the door in her face. The second neighbor laughed and said, "Karen, for God's sake, shut up." And the best thing? Someone, with a level of petulance worthy of applause, took her petition, went door to door, and turned it into the exact opposite. Yes, instead of a request to remove my mailbox, it became an official document asking to remove Karen from the neighborhood. And it was an absolute success. Within 3 days, the petition already had far more signatures than necessary. And now, the neighborhood had a new goal: getting rid of Karen. The condominium had clear rules. If a resident became a recurring problem, and the board voted against them, they could be removed from the neighborhood. And after years of abuse, the neighbors finally banded together to put an end to her era of terror. At the end of the week, I received an email from the community council. An emergency meeting had been arranged. And, to my surprise, the subject was Karen. On the day of the meeting, the community hall was packed. Everyone wanted to see the tyrant fall. Karen walked in with her usual poise, trying to look like she wasn't worried. But you could see in her eyes that she knew she was lost. The leader of the board stood up, cleared his throat, and announced, "The HOA has received multiple formal complaints about Ms. Karen's conduct. In light of this, we are putting her removal from the neighborhood to a vote." Karen went white. She tried to argue, tried to blame me, tried to say it was all a conspiracy. But no one else cared what she had to say. The vote took place, and the result? Unanimity. Karen was officially expelled from the neighborhood. And when the decision was announced, I saw something I never thought I'd see: the whole neighborhood applauding. She had 30 days to sell the house and get out of there. And, my friend, it was a wonderful month. The neighbors celebrated. People who barely spoke to each other began to unite, laughing at the fall of the Queen of Tyranny. And what about me? Oh, I enjoyed every second of it. I made a point of stopping in front of her house every day, saying hello with a smile. Little by little, the "For Sale" sign appeared in front of the house. And then, one fine day, Karen disappeared. She was gone, gone forever. The neighborhood was finally free, and my mailbox? Untouched. And if you liked this video, don't forget to comment and subscribe to the channel.